Hope everybody had a great summer. It's fun watching the Oma Dogs head to Omaha, and now we're recovering and looking forward to a great 2019, 2020, certainly academic and athletic year here at State. Bill just asked me to kind of say a couple words. I mean, I think, we've, now gone through 7 practices. We're certainly excited about the players on our roster. We're certainly excited about our style of play. I think the guys have practiced really well. Looking forward to tonight going into Davis Wade and having our first scrimmage. And as I said to them, it's an opportunity for them to validate the hard work, through these first 7 days and go out and have a little bit of fun. As I think Coach Moorhead says, no lifeguard on duty. There's no coach standing behind them telling them what's going on, and time for them to go out and play and execute. It's going to be I'm looking forward. I've really enjoyed working with this team, from January and winter program, through March and spring ball, through what we've accomplished in the summertime. I think, there's a standard of play, here at Mississippi State with regard to defense. It was here long before I was here, and we hope to continue that standard play. The names and the faces may be a little bit different, but the standard, remains the same. So with that, I'm sure there's a lot of questions.
Questions? We'll get Steve over
Maybe
there.
there aren't.
Coach, you graduated pretty much the entire 3 deep at defensive tackle. I have 2 questions about that. Number 1, how do you kind of approach that this year? And 2, in the future, how do you manage that a little bit better from a personnel standpoint so it doesn't get so skewed upperclassmen?
The guys that are gone, certainly we wish them well, and Braxton had a couple tackles last night for the Titans. Certainly Jeffrey's there, and all the other guys. We can go through those guys. I mean, we're looking forward to working with this group here, and I really like the way they've worked. First of all, their coach, Deke Adams, has done an outstanding job. He's been a great addition to the staff. Obviously a Mississippi native from Meridian. He's come in and had experience in the SEC, and really I think fits the identity of this program, a blue-collar mentality, a no job is too small mindset and everything that he does. And the guys, I mean, we have a good group up front. I mean, it's like I said, the names may have changed, but Lee Autry's played a lot of football for us, and certainly we're excited. We got James Jackson back on the defensive side, who had trained with us my first spring here and part of the first season, and then made the transition to the offensive side. And one of the things we're trying to acquire was a little bit more experience, and now with this transfer portal thing, we were trying to exhaust all options there. When that didn't happen, James became our graduate transfer, and he's done a good job through the first 7 practices. And then you got all the young bucks. You got Fabian Lovett, who's had a really good camp and pretty highly recruited player and has a chance to be pretty good. You got Jaden Crumity, who's had a good camp. Again, he's done a good job and has a chance to be pretty good. And then you got Cam Young, Devon Robinson, and then we did get a transfer, Alan Love. We're still in the process of understanding what his eligibility will be this year, but he's a great addition to the room. As far as what you said, it's kind of, I don't think I've ever been in a situation where you graduated so many players like that. I think when you try to Coach Moorhead and Mike Villagrana and our recruiting people do such a good job with our personnel. I don't think you can ever, you have a certain number of players with X amount of scholarships, you allot them to different positions, and I think you have to be disciplined, within the framework of that you don't over-recruit a class at a particular position. You certainly don't want to pass up on a really, really good player at a position, but you certainly, you can't have a situation, you can't just replace 6 seniors with 6, or you just regurgitate the same problem again. So it's just building that thing up, and one of the things that's unique in the state of Mississippi is certainly the junior college system, in that you can get guys in here who have a little bit more experience, who have a little bit more maturity, our country strong guys. And speaking of guys, I did forget one D tackle. I think a guy who's done a good job so far is Nathan Pickering, who is a true freshman, obviously from seminary, a highly recruited player. He's learning what college football is all about and taking his lumps. He's had some good snaps and had some bad snaps, but I'm just as excited about watching him out there tonight as anybody.
Brett, the coach has left.
It's been several years since State has had the same defensive coordinator 2 years in a row. In your experience, how does a defense kind of gel in a system from year 1 to year 2? I know your situation is different because of all the lost personnel, but there's 2nd and 3rd level guys that are playing in the same system for 2 years in a row for the first time in their careers.
I'll give you the 2 perspectives. I think from the coaching perspective, I think each coach at least I guess would be the way I would put it, is I look at each team as a different unit, it's a different identity. If you talk about our scheme, I never talk about scheme, I talk about style of play. And our style of play is non-negotiable, but each year, what we try to do is we try to tailor our system, to the talent that we have. One year it might be a strength on the D-line, one it might be linebacker in the secondary. One year you might be a really good blitz team, one year you might not be. It's tailoring, rather than recruiting players to fit into a scheme or a style, you tailor your scheme to what your players are capable of doing. So this team will be certainly, although, like you said, there's a comfort level in having the same coach for the first time, having the same terminology and things along those lines. This team will be, no reason it won't be very successful, but it'll be a little bit different than last year's team. The strength may be in different positions. So that's exciting. Each team has its own identity. Our style of play, the one thing that is non-negotiables, will always be relentless in our pursuit of the football. And, we always talk about relentless pursuit, never-ending pressure, being dominant, disruptive up front, and challenging all routes in the back end. And those are the things that we'll continue to do. Just the strengths of the unit and the strengths of the group, might be a bit different than they were last year. So I think from the player perspective on that hand, I think there's a comfort level. The safeties, I'm the first time the safeties have had the same position coach in 5 years, and the same coordinator, for the first time since, prior to, I think, Manny being here. The linebackers still have had a different coach each year for the last 5 years. The D-line, is transitioning to Deke, and those guys have done an outstanding job buying into the culture that coach has created and the culture that we have here at Mississippi State.
Paul, obviously you mentioned Nathan still trying to figure out what college football is about. Along those same lines with Monte Russell and Jack Harris, I know their head's still spinning trying to figure out which way to go, but just your initial impressions of those two guys.
Not just those two, but I think everybody in this 2019 recruiting class, I think it's a really good group. He was talking about the inside guys, so that's why I talk about Nathan, but I think Jack's a really good athlete. He put up incredible numbers in the weight room this summer. He's really a hard worker, a grinder, a blue collar type guy who fits our culture, fits what we're trying to accomplish. And DeMonte has really made a really good first impression. He probably needs to get a little bit stronger, but at the same time he's a dynamic pass rusher. And it's funny they gave him number 9. I thought that was kind of funny because of Montez, but he's a guy who I think during the course of his career could be one of those elite pass rushers, and maybe even with our situation here, maybe have a role on this team this year. But the other guys are good too. We got a lot of guys in the secondary, and I think everybody's really, really excited about all those guys. Jari and Jones certainly is a local guy who's had a great camp to date. Martin Emerson as well. I mean, Martin Emerson is really, to me almost, I could make a case he's been kind of a standout at times. He's done a really good job. Dylan Lawrence from George County. At the safety position, I'm really excited about, J.P. Purvis, and Colin Duncan. Colin has really caught everybody's eye with regard to special teams, and any and every one of those guys could have a role. Obviously, with the new rules starting last year where you could play these guys 4 games, it gives us an opportunity maybe early in the season in a non-conference schedule to fit those guys in special teams, get their feet wet, get them comfortable with, like you said, college football, and kind of move on from there.
Being in Brian?
Coach, you mentioned the junior college recruiting here in the state of Mississippi. Obviously, it's bigger than it is most places, but how much has that aided you guys in recruiting, and how, I guess, different is it for you guys to have that in your backyard?
Well, I mean, it's funny, one of the things we do in the defensive room is every day before the meeting we have a freshman tell the joke of the day. It's not hazing, I don't want anybody to start to think anything along those lines, or they get to introduce themselves and say, what we have discovered is the 2019 recruiting class is not a very funny group of people. And then we have an upper class guy give a word of the day, and hearing some of these guys talk, whether it's Chauncey or Brian Cole, everybody's journey to get here to college football is a little bit different. And you do have a unique situation in the state of Mississippi where we have 14 junior colleges, and you look at guys like Cole or Chauncey who started at another school, and for one reason or another it didn't work out there and got a second chance and have made the most of it. You can say it for Montez last year and Jonathan Abram. And then there's other guys who for one reason or another weren't recruited maybe to their liking or just weren't quite ready for this level of football. A guy like Capri Landrews, who I think is a player who's prepared to emerge, who one reason or another ended up at Colin and did well there and redshirted here and was a very, very solid contributor last year. And You know, again, I think, as I said before, the names may change, but the standard on defense and the style of play will remain the same. I think you're going to find that he's a pretty darn good player when he gets his opportunity to do his thing this year. So it's certainly a unique and a great tool, and one that the previous staff used to their advantage. We've got a great recruiting group. The connections that Coach Moorhead have with the coaches at the junior colleges, and Rod Gibson and different people have with the junior college coaches. I think it's like I said, it's a really, I wish I could say hidden, because if we're hidden we could get more guys, but it's a great tool for us in the recruiting process. It enables us in some ways, like you have the transfer portal where you can bring in a guy with a little bit more experience, but the junior college system allows you to bring in a player with a little bit more, I don't even know if it's maturity, but he's a little older player. And in this league, it's a league where it's a grown man. This league, the SEC West, is big league football. Pack your big boy, shoulder pads and thigh pads and things along those lines.
One of the things you talked with us a lot about last year was turnovers, and you lamented the fact that you didn't create enough of them. Do you feel like this is a unit that can create turnovers for you?
I hope so. I mean, it's been a point of emphasis, and I don't know that you can ever create enough. I always think turnovers are the great equalizer to takeaways. We don't, takeaways are defense, turnovers are offense, so we call them takeaways, and we want to take the ball away. Our mantra is everything that we give to the players is HTB, hunt the ball. We're really trying to hunt the ball. We studied techniques this off season to do a better job stripping the football. We've done a good job, trying to work on ball skills and things along those lines. And the reason I say it's a great equalizer is the takeaway game can turn a bad defense to good, and a good one to great, and a great one to become a championship one. And I think that's an area for growth with our guys. We acknowledge that. We were 5th in the conference last year in takeaways in the middle of the country. And I think the offensive players, when you visit with them, will tell us it's been a point of emphasis through these first few days of practice. They're icing their forearms and their wrists because we're hammering at that ball pretty good and doing a pretty good job of getting after it.
Coach, you lose a couple starters within your group, and Abram and McLaurin, but you return some guys with starting experience. How would you kind of assess where your first team stands right now?
Yeah, like I always say, opportunity is the key to life, and someone's missed opportunity is another person's opportunity. And last year, certainly nobody wanted. We returned Brian Cole, who was a starter through the first 4 games. He was injured against Florida, and I put him in the category. One of those guys who's got to step it up. Not that he's not stepped up. I mean, he's a name that you may not be familiar with, but by the middle of the season, if he plays up to his capabilities, may be on a lot of people's radars. He's very, very talented. He can cover like a corner. He can blitz like a linebacker. He's tough. He's physical. He's got all the great assets of a defensive player, for the nickel in our scheme. When he went down, then Capri Landers stepped up, and all you need to do is put on the Texas A&M game from last year to see that Capri's a really solid player. I call him, he's like a steady Eddie. He's never out of position. He does exactly what you ask him to do. He's got a quiet leadership style to him. He does a great job. He's a steadying influence. He's the yin to my yang a little bit, because sometimes I get on him pretty good. And we got this coach. He's done a great job through this camp. And then obviously at the free safety position right now is C.J. Morgan. And so when Capri got hurt, then C.J. stepped in, for the Alabama, Arkansas, Ole Miss in the bowl game. And C.J. got a lot of confidence. Last year at this time, C.J. was fighting off some people, on that second string, third string line. And in the middle of the season, we sat down and tried to, when we had the injuries, figure out who to put in there. And, interestingly enough, we, included Abram in the conversation. Abram said, C.J. got this, I'll get him right. And C.J. played really, really well, against in those last 4 games. And I think that the confidence grew in Capri and the confidence grew in C.J., where they aren't, although they may be first-time starters, at the beginning of a year, they have experience in games and in big games. And you can see that out there with them. The challenge is, developing a little bit of depth behind those guys, and that's where there's competition, and that's where, a night like tonight in the stadium, where the coaches aren't again out there providing instruction behind them, will be good. I mean, you got a guy like Marcus Murphy. Landon Guidry's been a standout during camp so far. I'm really, really pleased and impressed by him. London Kraft, has played a lot. Sean Preston, not played a lot, but London Kraft's in the mix. Sean Preston's in the mix. Then I mentioned the 2 freshmen, J.P. Purvis and Colin Duncan. So, I mean, there's pretty good competition for the 2s and 3s at the safety position and nickel position. The other nickel then is Fred Peters, who you talk about the junior college system. He was able to come in the spring and learn the system, and he's using the baseball analogy. He's like he's a utility guy. He can play second, third, or short. You can put him out in left field if you have to. He can do it all. I mean, I really kind of like his game, and he takes hard coaching. He loves football, and again, he's almost a 4.0 student. He embodies everything that's part of Coach Moorhead and our culture here.
Along those lines, when you mentioned looking for depth, and the fact that Fred can play various spots, would you put Marcus Murphy in that role too, as a guy that can back up in nickel or so?
Yeah, absolutely. Marcus trains at the nickel and at the free safety, and could probably play corner in a pinch, and certainly obviously very involved in the special teams, the return game, and things along those lines. So, Marcus is a very, very, very unique athlete.
I didn't do much research on this, but I'm assuming Chris Marv is the first guy that you've coached that is now on the same coaching staff as you?
You are wrong.
That's why I said I didn't do much research. How many of those
On
have
this
you had?
staff alone, I mean, one of our, well, I guess if you go full-time coach, but two of our GAs, I think the thing about this profession that people fail to realize sometimes is it's a relationship-based industry. It's all about relationships. And, when you recruit a young man or you coach a young man, you tell him it's not just about that recruiting process or that season. It's not just about 4 years. It's, hopefully, and again, it may not be a buddy-buddy relationship, but it's going to be a relationship that, man, I got your back. And on our staff currently, our corners GAs, Trey Bell, who I recruited and coached at Vanderbilt, and Trey ended up transferring to UConn after we left. So we maintained a relationship, and when Mark Powell left last year to go to Austin Peay, we reached out and got him. And obviously on our original staff here, Naeem Mortman is our linebacker GA last year. He's our D-line GA this year, and Naeem played for us for the 2 years that I was at Penn State. And when he had to hang up his cleats, his dreams of playing were finished. He wanted to pursue coaching, and Coach Moorhead had also coached him for a year, and just reached out to Naeem, and it was great. Great getting those guys on staff. Learning the industry, and both are going to be outstanding coaches. With regard to Chris, obviously he was a captain for us at Vanderbilt in 2011. Really was a special player and a special leader. And when Tem Lukabu left to go to the Cincinnati Bengals, he was certainly someone that was on my radar. It was my first call. He and I we talk at the convention every year. Hey, if the opportunity ever comes up, love to work together and this and that. And certainly there's a familiarity with my style and familiarity with our system. And I think coaches come in all different shapes and sizes, and Tem was more cerebral and probably a little bit more quiet, and Chris is a bundle of energy and has done an outstanding job so far. And I think not just as a coach, but as a teacher, leader, role model, mentor. And when you talk to him later, you'll know that he's a new father as well. So very excited for him, Chris, and his wife Lauren, and their family.
And just a little follow-up on that. You talk about relationships. What is your relationship like with Chris?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm a lot older than him, so it's professional. I mean, we're good. I mean, we're friends, but it's professional. I mean, my wife Maura and I have spent time with he and his wife Lauren, and we have a great relationship. I consider Chris to be a close friend, and almost like with any player, like I said, I think it's a relationship that I hope lasts beyond the 2019 football season. And I hope Chris is here for a long, long time. I hope I'm here for a long, long time. I hope we win a lot of games together.
Coach, you obviously got a long track record of coaching experience. Having been a head coach at one point, Coach Moorhead was talking about having guys on staff who have been head coaches and how much that helped him as a young Division I head coach. Having been in that position, did you have any other guys with former head coaching experience on your staff when you were at Columbia, or how much do you think you're able to help Coach Moorhead with that?
On my staff at Columbia, I did have our offensive coordinator had been a head coach at one point, and again, that was a long, long time ago, and I've learned a lot, from my experience as a head coach, things that maybe I didn't acknowledge at that point, but I understand now. Like I said, part of what I just said, I thought when you were a coach, you were the guy who made the scripts for practice, and you told them what time to show up on the bus, and you did that, and you yelled, got everybody going. I mean, but it's about creating a culture, and that's what I failed to maybe recognize at that time. And it's about establishing not just, Twitter-based relationships, but meaningful, positive relationships. So I know that now, and I probably didn't know that then. However, the question is more about my relationship with Joe with regard to that. I mean, we have people, Tony Hughes being one, Joe Jones being one, who've been head coaches more recently than I have. Obviously, last year Hud was on the staff, had been a head coach. I mean, I've got a unique quality of experience. I was a head coach at the Ivy League level, and I've coached at a lot of different SEC schools, Division I programs, and I'm one of the older, more experienced coaches on the staff. So, Coach uses the phrase quite often, stay in your lane, and he lets us know when the suggestion box is open and when it's closed. And I think Coach encourages, everybody to contribite. And when a contribution is asked for, and I'm happy to do it. And if I see something I think's right or wrong, I think all of our guys on the staff are really good about doing that in a professional manner and doing it the right way, not trying to make themselves bigger than the rest of the staff or anything along those lines.
Steve?
Coach, you've kind of got a reputation as a blitz-happy coordinator. Last year with your front, you were able to kind of generate some immediate pass rush with your front four. How do you anticipate that maybe affected your play calling this year?
Still probably a work in progress and still to be determined. But that's what I said before. I mean, each team kind of has its own identity, and this one's still, forming, I guess would be the way to put it. And it'll be determined between now and the Lafayette game. The focus is really on tonight's scrimmage and teaching fundamentals and techniques, but also, our style of play, which, as I said, is in your face in every aspect. And I just believe that's how you play defense now. I think the days, I guess the analogy that I use, a lot of people, defense coordinators, when they stand up, they say, this is how we adjust to this formation, or this is how we adjust to that formation. Why would hear offensive coordinators talk? They say, well, this is how I never heard them say, this is how we adjust to that coverage. They say, this is how we attack that coverage. So I said, well, why aren't defensive coordinators thinking like this? So that's how we look. This is how we attack this formation. This is how we attack this protection. And so everything we're doing is always, when we're in the staff room, trying to find a way to attack, trying to find a way to make the offensive coordinator, the offensive play caller, and the quarterback as incredibly uncomfortable as they can possibly be for those 3 hours on a Saturday. And so, it's probably not going to change who the blitzers are and what blitzes we run, may be different than they were a year ago. And certainly there may be, so it won't be very specific, but again, I think that style of play will remain very similar.
That it. All right.